Hey BoLS fans, AdamHarry back again with another BoLS review. Today I have the Dark Heresy book, Enemies Within, the Ordo Hereticus of the Askelion Sector. So, for those of you who may recognize the name, Ordo Hereticus, that is the Witch Hunters. So, these are the guys that search out the enemies within the Empire, or the Imperium of Man. So these are the guys. This is the book if you want to play a Sister of Battle or Witch Hunters, or you just really like Flamers. You may want to check out this book. Technical stuff out of the way real quick. Here's the back of the book. This is for, again, Dark Heresy 2nd edition. You do need the core rulebook, but this is a 144-page supplement for the game to go over all of the, cultists, witches, mutants, all that fun stuff. There are new Acolyte creation options, including Sisters of Battle, if you want to play a Sister of Battle. New weapons, new not attributes, but new abilities and psychic powers. New rules for Inquests, which is a new thing for the players that basically get to design and launch their own investigations instead of just doing what the Inquisitor says all the time. So that's pretty cool. But there's a ton of new stuff in this book. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Again, full color all the way through. I love the art in this book. It's a ton of new art, and some of it you may recognize some of the pictures, but it's all full of the grimdark, awesome art that we've come to know and love with these new FFG Dark Heresy books. So again, produced by our good friend Tim Huckleberry. Hey Tim, how's it going? Thanks again for the books, for putting the hard work in for these books, because they are really cool. They do add a lot to the universe of the Grimdark, the 40k universe. I really like just flipping through these and reading a lot of the background stuff. So let me get to the contents real quick. First off, this book is really only 3 chapters, but they're pretty beefy. So the first chapter is about the Hereticus, and it just talks about pretty much everything about the Ordo Hereticus. So it talks about traitors of mankind, what their philosophy is, whether it's okay to burn millions to save billions. Every heretic must burn type of thing. It goes through all that stuff. The second chapter is Fury and Fire. It's talking about combating heretics. It talks about new homeworld options for the Ag World, Feudal World, Frontier World. New background options for the Adeptus Sororitas, and the new background for mutants. New roles for fanatics, penitents, and the elite advancement of a Sister Battle, and the new reinforcement characters like the Arcoflagellants and stuff like that. It also goes over new weapons. So these are specialized mostly for Sisters of Battle, but who doesn't like new flamethrowers? And then it also talks about some new profane objects, which those could be used as plot devices and things like that. And then we get into psychic powers and Inquests, and the Inquest is really a really cool part about this book. I might spend a little bit more time talking about how the Inquests work. They're pretty neat. The third chapter, again, Roots of the Heresy. This just talks about a new sector, basically, multiple planets, new locations to fight at. I don't want to cover that chapter too much, because I don't want to give away anything. All you aspiring GMs out there, this is the section, chapter 3, that you really want to kind of zone in and focus in on, because it has a ton of new stuff, new leads, some new charts to roll on for confrontations and stuff like that. So it's where a lot of the adventure building stuff is. I don't want to spoil a lot of that stuff. So let's keep going. Right into the intro here. Just talks about all that stuff. Talks about the Ordo Hereticus. Again, if you don't have any familiarity with the background lore, these books are great for that, because it really opens up a lot of the lore for you and really goes over it in a lot of detail that you may not get from if you didn't have a codex or something from 10 years ago. Print a new one, GW already. Anyway, Ordo Hereticus. These are the Witch Hunters. These are the guys that search out inside the Imperium. We've got the guys that fight the aliens, the Xenos Hunters, the Death Watch, guys like that. But this is the Ordo Hereticus that focuses on rooting out heresy within the Imperium, within mankind, to kill heretics, mutants, and witches, and rogue psychers and all that stuff. So this is the guys we're talking about. Most of these guys are super zealous. When they leave, they talk about here, it's not uncommon for their departure to leave bonfires of heretics, mutants, and of course witches, so immense as to be seen from orbiting ships. So these guys like fire. They like to party with fire. and if you have the taint of heresy, have no mistake, they will bring the flames to you. So that's what they do. So fire again, purifying force. Also just like all the new art. I think I mentioned that earlier, but good job on the art, like that. I'm not going through all this stuff, but again, their philosophy, they talk about it. One of the things they also mention in this book quite a bit is the way your Inquisitor leans one way or the other. If he's a Puritan, meaning he refuses to have anything to do with mutants or witches or heretics or any kind of profane, blasphemous materials, he's the kind of guy that's like, burn it, kill it with fire, don't want to touch it, whatever. Then there's the more radical Inquisitors who will use chaos taint to fight chaos. So using well, using fire to fight fire, but at the same time, they talk about how that can be a major plot device. And this kind of talks about how your Inquisitor leans can really affect how you roleplay and how your acolyte kind of functions. So it talks about this. If this again is talking more about the leanings of your Inquisitor, if he's willing to, if you're an acolyte that maybe is opposite of your Inquisitor, say your Inquisitor is a radical and you're very Puritan, and how that conflict can kind of escalate or work out. So it's a pretty cool stuff. This is also just more background information. Gives you more things to read from, as far as things to pull from for stories. A lot of stuff about specific people and Inquisitors and stuff in the sector. So it's good stuff. Just going to go through this section. It's pretty much what the first chapter per se is all about. Also has again lots of really cool new art that I hadn't seen before. I liked a lot of that stuff. So and then we get into chapter 2, which this is when we get into the new kind of rules type stuff. Fire and Fury. So he talked about new homeworld and stuff, like the ag world, how that changes the starting template from your background point of view. So homeworlds, there's the feudal one, and each one's just slightly different. You get a new fate threshold, you get new characteristic modifiers, homeworld bonuses, homeworld aptitude, wounds. It has a different effect on your starting wounds, things like that. Recommended backgrounds, they talk about that, and then random selection. If you want to roll random homeworld, page 31 of the Dark Heresy core book, you can kind of go with that stuff too. So it just talks about some samples there, Frontier World, all the different planet types for the new stuff. This is a new background, the Adeptus Sororitas. This again is the precursor to a Sister of Battle. If you want to play a Sister of Battle, this is the background you need to start with. Talks about your starting skills, how you roll within the Imperium, how to kind of role play it, how to have that thought process going. They're pretty cool. They also mentioned talking about the start of the Adeptus Sororitas, how they there was Reformation, and I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but basically one of the High Lords of Terra had raised an army, and the Adeptus Sororitas, they were the daughters of the Emperor, and they ended up basically attacking him. This is also where the order came from, that the Adeptus, where is it, the High Lords, could no longer the Ecclesiarchy, Ecclesiarchy could no longer have men as a military force. So anyway, they get into all that stuff. If you're curious about that, it's a lot of the Sisters of Battle background. It's kind of melded into this book. So if you're a Sisters player, this is also a really great read. We get into the new background for Mutant. Again, we talked about this earlier with the Puritan or the Radical Inquisitor and how that impacts the. They actually also mention it in the Dark Heresy. You know, in this book, they talk about how if you're going to play a Mutant, you probably want to check with your GM. You may want to check with your party to see how that's going to actually interact. Because if your party is not okay with having a mutant in the party, it's going to be very interesting. Are you going to be very upfront about your mutantness? Are you going to hide it? Is that going to cause conflict? And they talk about how you can kind of use that for role-playing aspects. Next up, we have the Fanatic. Fanatics are interesting. They can be a hive ganger that's just really focused on something they saw, or it could be a planetary governor who is really focused on rooting out mutation, so he's burning everything. It just, there's a wide range of people that can be a fanatic, but it's a new role with new aptitudes and all that fun stuff, and they talk about some sample fanatic paths as well, but it's a new type of character, so it's no surprising that their fanatics will pop up from the lowest of the low ganger to the highest of the high, you know, planetary governor type guy. So new role penitent, penitent characters welcome the opportunity to suffer for their sins. They're the type of guys that are you know, whipping themselves up into a frenzy, literally. They actually have a little bit of another trait that applies there. So lots of stuff there for the penitent. It's a new role again. We have a couple of roll bonuses and things like that. The roll talent, die hard, or flagellant. So yeah, that's how that goes down for them. Then we got into the new Elite Advances Sister of Battle. I will read to you guys the requirements for the prerequisites. Here we go. You have to have 50 influence, 40 willpower, and then you have to have the Adeptus Sororitas background. Only members of the Adeptus Sororitas can undertake the harsh training to become Sister of Battle, obviously. So these are the women that become Sisters of Battle. They get the cool armor and all the extra enhancements, and they get a bunch of instant changes, and they're pretty awesome. So so they get a bunch of cool stuff: Emperor's Guidance, Furious Zeal, a lot of new traits and stuff like that, instant changes. So they're pretty baller. We get into the new reinforcement characters here. We have the Arco-Flagellant here, Penitent Engine, which both of these models I always really liked, particularly Penitent Engine. Man, my friend had a metal one of those, and it was always pretty intimidating to see on the table, except if you dropped it, then it just shattered into a billion pieces. But it was still scary for other reasons too. It's pretty beefy all across the board. So, and we get into the Weapons of Hate, and who doesn't like to look at new weapons? So, a bunch of new stuff. We have the Godwin Diaz bolters, which are specific to the Sisters of Battle. Basically, it even says here, if you are not a Sister of Battle or an Adeptus Sororitas, you better have a really good reason that you have one of these guns. So yeah, right here, must provide a rationale to the GM when attempting to acquire these items. So that goes for the bolt pistol, bolter, heavy bolter, and of course the super rare, near unique storm bolter, Godwin Diaz pattern storm bolter. So they're pretty cool. Then it goes in through all the different stuff. Heavy flamers, obviously that's going to be pretty popular for these type of things. It also talks about this really cool crossbow, Purgatus crossbow. It's a mix of a crossbow and a shotgun. It's basically, it can fire shotgun shells or crossbow ammunition, as well as its own Purgatus stakes, which are wooden stakes with silver runes that kind of really mess up demons and psychers, and yeah, it's pretty cool. Then over here we have some new melee weapons. There's actually a really cool grenade here, the Tears of the Emperor, which is gathered. Let's see here. The Tears of the Emperor contain a blood-like substance said to weep from the statues and relics across the Skellion. They're collected into crystals, and then whenever a psyker is struck by an attack from this weapon, immediately take a Perils of the Warp test. So that's pretty mean. And then if you're a creature with demonic trait, it gains warp instability, and if you already have warp instability, you take another -20 to that roll. So it can really mess up psychers and demons. Pretty cool there. More melee weapons there. The Axe of Retribution, pretty cool looking. A whole bunch of grenades here. Rad grenades, psych grenades, all that fun stuff. New melee weapons. These are all pretty dirty. There's some pretty crazy fire ones. All the cool new special ammunition. I'm not going to go through all that, but it's pretty cool. Emperor's Wrath shard bolts, for instance. The effect is a weapon using a shard bolt gains the crippling 2 quality. You use it with crossbows, so it's pretty cool. Here's a bunch of new stuff there. Protective gear, talks about the some of the armor the Sisters of Battle can wear, so power armor basically, and all that fun stuff. New vehicles. Most of these two are Immolator and the Rhino, as seen on the tabletop. Repressor, Armored Transport, all that fun stuff. Van Cleef's Waiter. So This is a cool section, the profane objects. I know it's a lot of text here and you can't really make it out on the screen too well, but basically these are plot devices. These are all your MacGuffins that you can choose from. They can either be, you know, just a semi-helpful, like the Animus skull here, which is basically an evil servo skull. But how do you know it's an evil servo skull? That's the good question. So if you're looking for the Animus skull, for instance, you might be scouring the planet and just destroying every single servo skull you come across, which, you know, the Mechanicum may not appreciate that too much. It's also a myth and a rumor, a legend. It may not be a real thing. So you know, it's just a servo skull that got tainted by the warp somehow, and yeah, how do you know? So there's a whole bunch of stuff about that. But each one of these things, you know, the bones of Cardinal Cassiel, the candles and ending, Carmen Aquila, stuff like that, these can be used as plot devices. They can be really powerful relics that are bad, so you got to find them and shut them down or whatever. They're also really great for the Inquests to use later on. So there's a ton of stuff, new MacGuffins to choose from, and they also encourage the DMs to say, hey, this may or may not be accurate, the information in this book. You know, if you need to tweak it, go for it. I mean, that's part of the fun. So we get into some new talent, stuff like that. So like the Flagellant talent, this one lets you take damage, sorry, fatigue, and then you get a +10 bonus in your willpower test to resist fear, pinning, psychic powers, or suffering corruption. There's also, you can whip yourself into a frenzy with it. So stuff like that, just new powers, or not powers, new talents to use. Mounted warrior if you are a biker or stuff like that. Tainted psyker, all that fun stuff. We talk about psychic powers. There's new ones here. I really like the deja vu power. Basically, if you win the willpower check against the target now has to redo the action he did last turn. And if the action last turn was to shoot at a target, he may be firing at a target that's no longer standing in the same space, but it uses his action. The target has to replay that again. So it's kind of a neat twist. I like it. It's not like super game breaking or anything, but it's kind of cool. So there's some new stuff in there, so check those out. I don't want to read them all because I don't want to ruin it for you guys, but you go through there. This is the new section on Inquests. This section is really cool. This is more, a lot of times if you're a GM, you may get tired of coming up with new concepts every time. This allows you to kind of take a step back on the players. When the players get the itch, they're like, hey, I want to go investigate that planetary governor some more. I feel like he could have been a heretic. This allows your players to run with it, and allows the GM to take a break from designing everything all the time, from writing new stuff up. But this allows the players to take a hand in that, more active. You know, it really depends on your playing group. If that's something that you could see letting fly, or if you need to squash that idea up front. But the new Inquest system is a way to do that, and you can use it. You know, it's great if you have a couple of PCs, maybe one or more PCs that's an Inquisitor already. So that's where these Inquests come in. Or if you have a really crazy fanatical person that wants to jump in and say, hey, I really want to investigate that governor, this is where this comes in. So there's 3 parts to an Inquest. The major steps: the preparation, prosecution, and resolution. And each one of these steps contains a lot of different elements depending on what you want to do. But the main objective for most Inquests is to bring to justice the target heretic. So whether or not they are heretics, that's kind of what you're doing. You're gathering more information, more investigation points to see if you can prove that they're heretics or not. So and they can be minor scope, major scope, or extremists. So you've got the Hereticus Minoris, Hereticus Majoris, and Hereticus Extremis. So those are what those for. And then if they successfully complete those, they get bonus influence. So, but it's cool. There's a lot of new stuff. The Inquest section is really cool. It talks about it more for the GM, how to use these tools and stuff like that. And it's kind of funny because it's player-generated clues and player-generated story, which ideally, if you're playing these games, you have an impact on the story, but you may not have written it out from start to finish as the player, whereas the GM's kind of got a general idea where they want the game to go. This really opens it up and lets a much more free-flowing game kind of go. They do give you some guidance to the GM, One of the things I recommend, and I thought this was really cool, is to kind of, you know, if you've ever been in a game and had the party kind of talking out what's going on or what they think's happening or any theories they have, basically the GM just kind of jots that down and goes, oh yeah, I like that idea about the planetary governor actually being a pawn of a greater demon. Maybe I'll save that for later. Come to find out, once you climb that rung, all the ladder all the way to the top, and you find out, hey, the planetary governor was a pawn of a demon. Hey, way to go, guys! It confirmed your suspicion the whole time. Don't you feel cool? So, that's a good general GM tip, and the Inquests really allow the player. It empowers the player to do that, and lets the GM take some of the load off of them, because man, it can be stressful. So it's pretty cool. One of the things too they do bring up is the complications table, which is pretty neat. It's just you roll on this table to see, yeah, everything's going swimmingly for your investigation, but suddenly you get betrayed, or suddenly there's a hab riot, or maybe mistaken identities or something like that. This one's really cool. The undercover operatives. It turns out that the targets of the inquest, or individuals serving the target, are actually undercover. And if you gather enough investigation points before the final throwdown, you realize this. If not, you actually reduce your influence reward by 1 for each inquest. So it can come back to bite you in the butt. You've actually rooted out another Inquisitor's, secret guys that he had, his undercover operatives. So it's pretty cool. So it's a cool chart for the complications for the inquests, and then it just talks about the rewards for completing inquest. And then it goes through some examples here, and again, I don't want to read this stuff flat out, because if you're a GM, this is basically your story hooks and how those to use those. It also talks about the radical path. Again, I mentioned it earlier with the whole Puritan radical thing. This is what the radicals would use, some of the different tools, and by tools I mean groups that they would use. So like a bounty hunter, or a hive gangers, or maybe a death cult, or heretic with a K, because they're cult Mechanicus heretics. Whether or not you would use mutants or rogue psychers, or even maybe like the local mob boss, so things like that. And then this also talks about if you're an acolyte of an inquisitor, are you going to be upfront, or are you going to use it more subtle, or how is that going to work out, because maybe he's not cool with that plan. So yeah, pretty neat. And again, more awesome artwork. This actually looks like a Necron guy. So I don't know if that's intentional. Well, obviously it is, but it's pretty cool. Radical peers, they talk about all that, using cults, how to use those guys. And then we get into chapter 3, which is the roots of the heresy. Again, this talks about the sector, the worlds of Ascalion, the different home worlds, and all that fun stuff. Again, I don't want to go through all of this, but there's a ton of new enemies, new profiles that you can use. It gives you rough Act 1, 2, and 3 story arcs to use with possible complications for each homeworld and things like that. It's really cool. There's a ton of stuff here. I'm not going to go through all that because it's spoilerific and I don't want to ruin it, but go check the book out. That's all I'm trying to say. I saw one thing I want to point out. There was one like Nurgle guy, and I saw a Khorne guy here too. So they do have a lot of the demons representative. So if you want to have another Khorne throwdown, there you go. They had some earlier. There was a Slaanesh guy, and I'm pretty sure there's this Inch guy wandering around in this book, but pretty funny. So anyway, that's going to be it for this review. I don't want to again ruin it, but there's a couple other charts for cults and cult leaders and stuff like that. So that helps out with the GM on the fly if you just want to roll up some cults. So it's pretty cool. And then heresies, subplots, so all that good stuff. Lots of really good information here. New twists. Again, don't want to spoiler it, so I'm going to skip right through. Tons of art, new art, some of the old stuff. I recognize these guys. That's actually an Inquisitor, and then Adeptus Sororitas. That's the somebody online is going to butcher me for that. It's a sister battle. I can't remember her name. If you remember her name, put it in the comments. Anyway, that's it for this book. Pretty cool stuff. I liked it. It's a good read, even if you aren't playing in a Dark Heresy campaign. It's still a lot of fun to read this book. Just a ton of information. But that's it for this review. AdamHarry from BoLS signing off. Go check out this book, play some Dark Heresy, and get your role play on. Have a good one.